November there was no exam, actually very limited exam centers are there. So please everyone mute yourself, please. Please everyone mute yourself, and please don't write on my screen. I don't know who is writing, so please mute your screen. Okay, so the things are like that. So now what is our plan? Actually, before starting our session, we will take the station 1 today. Station 1, particularly the we will discuss about the abdomen station today. Because of COVID, we are having serious difficulties in seeing the cases. All right, so this diet we'll definitely focus on station 1 and 3 as well, so that even with your limited resources, with your limited scopes, you have that amount of confidence in yourself, and that tips, those are very helpful actually to reach to the diagnosis as early as possible. And the tips we will give to you actually are the bedside tips. Normally, which things we try to teach in the hospital sessions, we will be discussing this in the online in our sessions with station 1 and 3 classes. All right, so there will be frequent sessions on that, so that you don't forget the clinical stations, and don't you even with the limited case practicing presenting, you get that vibe of real exam scenario, that you have to focus like that. So you don't feel so nervous, because you have to give the exam without seeing the patients. It is the bitter truth. Okay, so maybe it is the fact that you have to go for the exam with very limited number of cases, only on the basis of online courses, tips and tricks and all, and some you might have some practice on your home with your home people, with only just physical examination practicing. So these things will be happening, and you have to even after that you have to give the exam. All right, so be prepared for that. But I want to say that with our course, that how we will actually approach. Okay, so your exam will be in, if you get the center, particularly I think that in past diet in India, particularly may I know that Kochi is open or not? So as far Dr. Ronnie, can you say that Kochi is open this diet?
Yes,
Have you
Kochi
seen?
should be open. I don't know exactly.
Okay, so you are
And I'm
relocated
not
in Delhi,
sure.
right? You are
Yes,
relocated in Delhi. Yes, you are relocated in
yes.
Delhi. All right. So may I know the name of the candidates who have been already given seat in relocated? So Dr. Zaman, are you relocated in Delhi, Dr. Zaman?
Yes, I didn't get the center. Actually, they shifted my exam to the 2021, but they didn't actually mention the center.
Where was your previous seat? Where was your previous seat?
It was in Hyderabad.
It was in Hyderabad. All right. So Hyderabad is not Hyderabad is not conducting exam, right? In the first
No,
grade,
no, they are conducting exam, but they are not taking new applicants.
or new applicants. All right, all right. So Dr. Zaman, please all mute your mics, please. All mute your okay, not Dr. Zaman. So Dr. Zaman, I will recommend you, please call to our CP. Okay, call to our CP, and please talk to them that you want to shift your exam center to some other
Chennai.
center. Okay, as you have scope, like I don't like Hyderabad because I
Actually,
have some.
actually, I had a choice. Actually, my first choice was in the Chennai.
So right now we have particularly three centers actually, as far I know, that is Chennai, Kochi, and UAE. All right, UAE as well. So three centers are there. So you those who think that like you have during our course we will completely give you preparations on we will conduct the sessions that will complete your preparation on station 2, 4, and 80% to 90% of station 5. All right, in our course. And regarding the station 1 and 3, okay, So we will teach everything that will be actually taken in the bedside in the hospitals. Okay, so every teaching will be given regarding the theoretical aspect, the tips and tricks and all in our course. It is a promise. But the thing is that your in station 1 and 3, your 60 to 70% preparation will be uncovered. Okay, but even with that, if you have some sort of what should I say, some sort of uh, orientation, some sort of orientation with PACES courses or PACES cases, like maybe 3 or 4 months of orientation, then I should tell that you should apply. You should apply. Okay, like you have seen some sort of cases for PACES, like for 2 to 3 months. Actually, maybe you know that what is ILD. You know that how a murmur of mitral regurgitation, aortic stenosis, aortic regurgitation. So you have actually had some orientation for the PACES case. So if you think like that, you have like 1 or 2 months of orientation even, okay, you can go for exam, because the in station 1 and 3 they normally give some common cases. It is not so much difficult, not so much difficult. They will say something like, if I tell you that they sometimes to my candidates I always tell you that, suppose I make you a carousel for you. Okay, so what sort of carousel it can be? Like sometimes it is a very common phenomena, like suppose if I fix that in abdomen station 1 you get a case of CLD, chronic liver disease, so it is not a difficult case, or you are given a case of adult polycystic kidney disease or renal transplant. So these things are very easy to diagnose, so there is nothing to worry about. Even if you are you didn't have seen a case of renal transplant, even you can diagnose it, because there will be a scar, so it is renal transplant. Okay, so in adult polycystic kidney disease, the kidneys will be very large and very cystic. So even if you haven't seen a case of ADPKD, the ADPKD will tell that I am ADPKD. So you don't need to be nervous for that. All right. So sometimes CLD, the patient will be icteric, there will be ascites, the patient will have some stigmata, there will be some bandage mark of ascitic fluids study. So these things are very easy. So it can be the case of abdomen, and mostly within these 3 cases, you will get 1 case. There is high chance. We are going to take this session today on abdomen. You will come to know about this. Okay, so then if I tell about the respiratory, okay, if I tell about the respiratory, so what are the common respiratory cases? So common respiratory case, suppose your most common case that is given in the Indian center, COPD. Everyone can diagnose a case of COPD, so it's a very common case. Sometimes they will be given a case with scar. Okay, sometimes they will give a case with scar, so it can be a lobectomy, it can be pneumonectomy, rarely it can be a lung transplant. Okay, so if and ILD and bronchiectasis, there will be crepitations. Sometimes it is fine bibasally, sometimes it will be scattered like bronchiectasis, coarse crepitations, clubbing will be there. So it is not so difficult. So it can be the case of respiratory system. In suppose cardiovascular system, it can be a case of mitral stenosis, it can be a case of aortic stenosis. So if you know that how aortic stenosis is, how mitral stenosis is, or if you have listened so many audio clips of the murmurs, so even there is a chance that you can detect it. All right. In neurology, they provide you stroke, they provide you facial nerve palsy, they might give you a clean cut case of the peripheral neuropathy. So these things are not so much difficult. Okay, so you guys are very depressed that we cannot see the cases, so how I will appear for the PACES exam? So if you think normally, if you think the things quite with something like okay, I will not take it so hard. Okay, so it is possible, and particularly the Bangladeshi doctors, what happens to you while we run our clinical courses in hospitals? Actually, we have shown thousands of cases. I want to say thousands of cases in 6 months period. So it was like 3 hours, 4 hours sessions in the hospitals, and you have seen actually too much cases. Actually, those are not needed. You have seen too much cases. All right. So there are many candidates, many international candidates I have seen while I attended course in abroad, that they only take 3 to 4 days course and go for the PACES exam, and even they pass. Okay, but the thing is that their station 245 is very strong. Their 245 is extremely strong, but whatever weakness they have in station 1 and 3, it is covered by the station 5. So station 5 is the cornerstone of your PACES pass, because if you get full marks in the station 5, So in that case, you can even afford to lose some mark in station 1 and 3. Okay, because if you get 8 out of 8 from the physical science section of the station 5, you need only more 6 marks from station 1 and 3. That is not a difficult task at all. Okay, so I will recommend that those who have some level of orientation, because you never know that when the patient situation will be all right, and it might take too much time, like 1 year and 1.5 years, you know, no, don't know. So if you have some sort of orientation, go for filling up the form. Okay, so it will be like, if it helps you, and if you are so much what should I say, so much you do some hard work, okay, you follow us, there is a high chance that you might pass. Okay, so this is the thing. All right, now I will start my session. Okay, so our today's session is we are starting with the station 1, as it is our first class. So we'll start with the station 1, that is our abdomen system. So we'll start with that, and hopefully it will be a very important and fruitful session, because we will focus actually what happens in the exam room. We will not discuss something theoretical, something, you know, that is written in the books, but actually we will give you some sort of information, some sort of tricks that will actually help you to reach to the diagnosis as early as possible. That is very important, you know. Okay, so let's start with abdomen. Okay, so abdomen. So there is 3 domains of case in abdomen. Okay, there is 3 domains of case. Number 1, okay, that is, you know, renal abdomen. Okay, there is renal abdomen. Number 2, hepatobiliary system and GIT proper, and there are rarely some hematological cases. Okay, so in case of renal abdomen, so it can be a renal transplant, it can be adult polycystic kidney disease, and it can be end-stage renal disease, particularly the patient on dialysis. Okay, patient on dialysis, and there might be some sort of features of end-stage renal disease, fluid overload, and some other complications. Okay, in case of this segment, your topmost diagnosis is CLD. Okay, sometimes they will give you some only viral hepatitis or hepatitis. Okay, sometimes you get a case of hepatocellular carcinoma on the background of CLD, or isolated hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay, sometimes you will get some scar based cases. Okay, particularly inflammatory bowel disease with some scars, post-operative cases. Only there will be some sort of scars, particularly in the UK center. We will take some class on the scar as well. So these are the cases on the segment of hepatobiliary system and GIT. Okay, and hematological cases, you can get, you know, hemolytic anemia. You can case hemolytic anemia, particularly, you know, that thalassemia, particularly in Indian subcontinent, thalassemia is very common. So you can give in a case like in Kochi or Chennai, you might guess some cases of hemolytic anemia. This is common, you know. All right. Another case is that lymphoproliferative disorder, lymphoma, leukemia, any sort of lymphoproliferative disorders. It is also a common case. Another thing is that myeloproliferative disorder. Okay, myeloproliferative disorder. It can be, you know, CML is a diagnosis. Myelofibrosis is a diagnosis. All right. So particularly CML, myelofibrosis. So anything might be with the myeloproliferative disorder. All right. And rarely you will get some other things with only organomegaly, only, or you might not get the ultimate diagnosis, but there will be some sort of organomegaly. You will end up with the differential diagnosis. So it can be, you know, hepatomegaly, it can be splenomegaly, it can be hepatomegaly with splenomegaly, but it will be very difficult to actually tell that what is the condition. Okay, so there might be some situations like that. So you have to have a good idea on the differentials of the hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, hepatosplenomegaly, and also hepatosplenomegaly plus minus lymphadenopathy. Okay, so with these combinations, you have to tell about the logical differentials, and the logical differentials will actually based on this actually these things like liver conditions, hematological conditions, and whatever it is, but you have to tell logically according to the sequences. All right, so these are the cases for the abdomen. Okay, and here with this organomegaly you have to always keep in mind about the infection. Okay, infection, that is, it can be Kala-Jar, it can be malaria, it can be disseminated tuberculosis, it can be some other connective tissue disorders or storage disease. So the differentials for the organomegaly. All right, so this is important. Okay, so anyone want to add any other diagnosis that I didn't added here? Any other vital top diagnosis that I missed from abdomen?
Thalassemia.
You can.
Thalassemia.
I have already told in the hematological section that is hemolytic anemia. Okay, that is that means some sort of hemoglobinopathies or some blood disorders. Okay, so it can be there. Okay, so any other differentials that I missed?
Liver transplant.
Liver transplant, excellent. I missed that. Thank you. Liver transplant, particularly in case of UK, liver transplant, and also in Hyderabad there is a case of liver transplant. Okay, any other case? Okay, so these are the differentials you have to keep in your mind. Okay, you have to keep in your mind. All right, so whenever you are going for abdominal station, you cannot afford to forget about these vital differentials, and always keep it in your mind that whatever your impression is, okay, so never tell any rare diagnosis on top. Okay, any rare diagnosis, you don't put them on top. So these things will be your particularly your vital differentials. Okay, please mute your all mics, please. Like suppose you suspect that your patient might be having some sort of connective tissue disorder. Okay, some sort of connective tissue disorder like Felty syndrome. You are thinking that your patient is anemic, your patient has got splenomegaly. Okay, so on the basis of that, you are telling that the Felty syndrome is your first diagnosis. Okay, so hopefully you will be there is a high chance that your diagnosis will be wrong. Okay, your diagnosis will be wrong because actually you have to have a very good idea on the patient's differentials, because if you tell about the rare diagnosis, you will be rarely right. So you have to understand the vital combinations of the diagnosis. That is very important. Okay, so if I tell that normally what are the commonest passage diagnosis, what are the commonest passage diagnosis? Number one is renal transplant. It is a solid diagnosis, there is no doubt about that. Adult polycystic kidney disease, it is a solid passage diagnosis. Okay, then if you come that CLD is the passage diagnosis. Okay, so it will be actually mostly in Indian 50% of the cases of abdomen might be CLD. Okay, so it is the passage diagnosis. All right, occasionally in young age patient, that is any blood disorder, particularly any hemoglobinopathies like thalassemia. Okay, thalassemia is also a vital differential. Lymphoproliferative disorder can also be your topmost diagnosis, but be careful because the patient should have hepatosplenomegaly, patient should have anemia, patient might have lymphadenopathy. So before commenting on that, mostly the patient might be old age patient, the leukemia patient or the lymphoma patient. So this diagnosis can be the top one, but you need to be very much sure. And myeloproliferative disorder is also a vital differential, with particularly the patient should have some gross splenomegaly, like the spleen has crossed the midline, like umbilicus. So in case of CML, okay, chronic myeloid leukemia, the patient is anemic, the spleen is just crossed the umbilicus as well. So it is very huge splenomegaly. So in case of huge splenomegaly, we have 3 or 4 differentials, and of those differentials, the most vital is the CML and the myelofibrosis. Okay, so both of the condition presents with gross splenomegaly with anemia. Actually, gross sort of splenomegaly will be there, and the patient will have some anemia, and the myeloproliferative disorders will come in that case. So these are the vital pieces differential. All right, and with some sort of organomegaly, then you have to actually tell about the logical differentials for the organomegaly. Like it can be isolated hepatomegaly, it can be isolated splenomegaly, it can be hepatosplenomegaly. Okay, so in that case you will tell about the logical differentials that I suspect like this. Okay, so we are coming to that point, that in which case which differentials should you tell first, and other things will come later on. I will tell about the gross things. I will not tell about the so many differential. There are so many differential, but if you tell so many differential and think many things, then there's high chance that you will actually fail, because actually you have to combine the things. You have to give a combination and permutation. You have to do the combination and permutation for the particular matching pattern, that with this combination I will tell these differentials first. So this is very important that you get to know that. All right, so this is very important. Okay, so these are the case, and these are the commonest differentials, and others might happen, but before commenting on that, be very careful. Okay, be very careful, because abdomen is the most easy station. So you should score top score in abdomen, because abdomen is the most easy station. So you should not lose any mark here. Okay, so this is very important. All right, so entering the room. Okay, just keep in your mind when you are entering into the room. Okay, so there will be some sort of um, prompt will be there. Okay, some sort of prompt will be there, like your patient might have some tummy distension. Your patient might have some tummy distension. So already they are noticing you that it can be a case of CLD, it can be a case of ADPKD. So they will try to give some sort of clue, and those clue might be kept in the room with the instruction. Okay, that your patient, this is your patient, and this patient has some tummy distension, please examine him, and yeah, this is your patient, please go for examination. So with this complaint of tummy distension, they are actually noticing, they are trying to give you a clue that this patient might be having some ascites, or might be having some sort of adult polycystic kidney disease. That's why they are giving that clue that this patient has that. Sometimes they might tell you that your patient has got some your patient is icteric. Okay, icteric, so please examine the patient. With the patient being icteric, so what can be your patient's diagnosis? Okay, so it can be a case of hepatitis with icteris, it can be a case of hepatitis, rarely it can be a case of CLD with some decompensation. Sometimes with icterus it can be a case of thalassemia. Okay, it can be a case of thalassemia. So with icterus these things might happen. Sometimes they will tell you that your patient has got some abdominal discomfort or some sort of pain. Okay, abdominal discomfort or some sort of pain. So with abdominal discomfort, the patient might have ADPKD. Okay, ADPKD. This patient might have some sort of, it can be some hepatitis, it can be hepatitis, or abdominal discomfort, it can be ascites, it can be ascites. Okay, all right. Your patient comes to you with fatigue and weakness. So with this complaints, patient might be having severe anemia, And with anemia, what will be your differential? With anemia, your patient's differential will be some, some lymphoproliferative disorder like lymphoma or leukemia. It can be some myeloproliferative disorder like, it can be CML, it can be myelofibrosis. With anemia, your patient might be having also, some, hematological conditions, particularly the thalassemia or any hemolytic anemias or hemoglobinopathies, sickle cell anemia, as any sort of hemoglobinopathies, hemolytic anemia. So the patient might be having this sort of fatigue and weakness with anemia, and for that anemia there might be some underlying conditions might be there. So whenever you will enter the room, your lead examiner will tell that your patient is having some tummy distension, please examine him. Your patient is having jaundice, so would you please examine your patient and approach for that. Or he might tell that your patient has got abdominal discomfort or pain. So with this entering comments, with whenever you enter the room, so there will be a note around the bedside that this patient is having shortness of breath, this patient is having chest pain, this patient is having tummy pain. So don't ignore that. My message is that don't ignore that, because a clean cut CLD patient should not have some serious tummy pain, but viral hepatitis patient will be having abdominal pain. Okay, and in case of CLD with gross ascites, there will be tummy discomfort. Okay, so these things actually has some meaning. So what happens, most of the time we ignore that. Most of the time whenever we entered the room, we ignored that clue. Actually there is some vital message there, so they are trying to give you some clues, you have to pick that. So this is the main thing, that whenever you will enter the room, please read it very carefully, that what is the instruction that is given inside the room, and your examiner is giving focus on that. So this is important, number one. Okay, I am going step by step, just with entering until you end the session. There is so many good books, please go through the bookish knowledge. That is not my concern, but what will happen in the PCS exam, that is my concern. Because think like, whenever I am telling you everything, try to imagine and try to meditate that this is going to happen with me when I enter to the room, so that with this meditation the same thing will happen in your exam hall. And if you want, you can check YouTube videos today after my session. There are so many abdominal case in the YouTube. Check every videos on abdominal system, then try to match that. Yes, Dr. Shadli told this and this is the actual scenario here. So you will be having more idea on that, and you will be pretty confident on your abdominal session. All right, so this is the entering thing. Okay, this is the entering thing. And whenever you will enter the room, after entering, you reading the instruction, and after entering the room, you have to do a vital general survey. That is very important. You will not examine the patient, you will actually, you have to become a detective. Okay, you have to become a detective only by seeing by diagnosis. Okay, diagnosis by diagnosis by eye estimation. Okay, eye estimation diagnosis. So this is possible whenever you will actually, the like I am a PCS instructor, I have been teaching PCS for last almost 3.5 years, and also I have taken preparation for PCS for 1.5 years. So almost like for 5 years I'm doing all these things. So now if I go to bedside, okay, one candidate once told me that, Dr. Shadli, like while we conducted PACES session in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, all right, in every session, and those who have participated in my real case sessions, they know, in every sessions we show around 20 cases. Maybe there is 2 or 3 mentors, and in every session we at least show 20 cases per day. Okay, and like if our session starts, like 4 p.m. At the noon. Okay, so then we just go to, go to the hospital 1 hour before our session, and we select the cases for our candidates. All right, so what happens, with repeated practicing and repeated showing off the cases to our patients doctors, so it became our second nature. Okay, so whenever we go to the bedside of the patient, we I don't know, it is something sixth sense, something sixth sense. So I cannot explain you what it is. I don't know, actually I don't know, I cannot explain. But this is all about the experience. So whenever I go to the bedside, whenever I examine the patient, or I just stay there like 2 to 3 minutes, I get some clues, some inner thoughts that comes actually spontaneously. And it is not about preparation. It is something, it is something heavenly. You never know that, because it only comes after when you actually see so many cases, then these things will come. And these things I am trying to share with you. These things will not be written in the book, but if you practice more and see more cases, in that case you will develop those skills, that okay, with only eye estimation, just observing the patient very carefully, you might get the diagnosis. So this general survey is the most vital part of any cardiology station. Suppose in a cardiology, in any cardiology station, like any cardiology or abdominal station, suppose your case in a cardiology station is very short of breath, she or she is in the propped up position with a oxygen mask, okay. And just only with that inspection, then you just inspect her leg. If there is edema, okay, the patient is having edema and the patient is in the propped up position with the oxygen mask. So there is 2 or 3 possibilities. The first possibility is this patient is having the heart failure. Okay, this patient is having the heart failure. And also this heart failure might be the isolated one, or it can be the congestive cardiac failure. Along with that, there might be associated pulmonary hypertension as well. So these things you have to focus on whenever you are seeing this sort of cases. You have to auscultate the lung bases even more carefully. You have to check for the pulmonary hypertension even more carefully, because your patient is like this. Okay, the patient is cyanotic, patient is having the oxygen cylinder, the patient is having the edema. So you have to be more vigilant to diagnose the heart failure and the pulmonary hypertension. So in this sort of case, if you only focus on the murmur, you will definitely fail, because in that case you will miss the heart failure, you will miss the pulmonary hypertension. Okay, so there are some, this sort of clues are there, so you have to understand that. All right, so right now what I was mentioning, that diagnosis by eye estimation, or some only inspection, diagnosis only by inspection, that is very important. So what are the vital clues, you have to look for, okay, whenever you are entering the room, okay, whenever you are entering the room. So in normal case, okay, so in that case you have to, whenever you enter the room, just inspect the patient very well. Number one, the face is very important. Okay, face is very important. Whenever you are looking at your patient, you know that what is the age of your patient. Okay, so if your patient is old age patient, okay, so the diagnosis will be something different. And if your patient is very young, like it can be some hemoglobinopathies, the patient is very pale, okay. So just some sort of clues. So in face, can anyone please prompt me that with face what sort of clues you might get? uh, can anyone help me? Dr. Saif, please tell me that with face, only inspecting the face in abdominal sessions, what things can be very apparent? Okay, just when you are looking at the face of the patient.
Parotid enlargement.
Okay, so number one, you want to think about the parotid enlargement. Okay, number one,
Then
I
pallor,
appreciate
pallor, icterus. Then
pallor.
encephalopathy, whether he is like oriented or not.
Okay,
And
okay.
cheilitis we can see.
No, just only gross, just not opening the mouth.
Puffy,
Only with the
puffiness.
face.
Yeah, puffiness on the face.
Okay, puffiness on the face. All right. What else?
Then pallor icterus already done. And next is the parotid enlargement. Then mm,
Jaundice.
yeah, icterus is like jaundice.
Okay. What else?
And
Is that-
sensorium also we can see there. Xanthelasma, yes, but if xanthelasma is there or not.
Okay. What else?
And
Temporal wasting, or
yes,
masseter
yes,
wasting. That
nutrition,
is
nutrition we
nutritional,
can see.
some sort of
Yeah.
nutritional deficiencies. Okay.
Hmm.
What else? Rash, some sort of SLE or something like that. The patient might
Yeah,
be having any connective
rashes
tissue
we can
disorder,
see.
and any sort of
Heliotropic
rashes.
rashes,
Yes,
SLE
different
rashes,
sort of rashes.
heliotropic rashes.
SLE rashes. The SLE patient might have hepatosplenomegaly as well. So any sort of rashes, any connective tissue disorder. So anything
Yeah.
else?
फिर nose, nasal bridge we can see.
Very good. That is the thalassemic phases. The
Yeah.
thalassemic phases. Okay, so you will just with the inspection you might have a clue that this patient is having thalassemic phases. Okay,
Yeah.
so all right, anything else? Anyone? Just I want participation from all,
Yeah,
please.
and it will like petechial rashes or like we says them
What?
telangiectasia. Telangiectasia.
Rarely you will get that. This is not very common. Telangiectasia. Okay, what vital things are missing? Any vital things you are missing? Any pigmentation?
Patient looks very cachectic.
Yes, cachectic I already told, like the temporal wasting and cachectic pigmentation, it is also in the
Yeah,
seven.
pigmentation on the like you're
Yeah,
telling about like
pigmentation.
lips.
Yes, any pigmentation, particularly for hemochromatosis, adrenal
Yeah.
insufficiency, any sort of pigmentation, black
Yeah.
patient, very bad black patient, and also in case of in case of thalassemia, the patient might be having secondary hemochromatosis. So after the blood transfusion, so any dark patient, it is also a clue.
Scratch marks.
Yeah, any tattoo marks. Okay, yes, any tattoo marks around the neck or face. Sometimes face, very rare side, but in the neck side. So anything in the face you want to check whenever you inspect the face.
True.
On sometimes lemon yellow tinge. Okay, lemon yellow tinge might be there. Those who have worked in the kidney clinics or urology clinic, they know what I mean. Okay, the CKD patient have a particular look. So whenever you get chance to see the renal cases, whenever you will see so many renal cases, there will be some that I told that you will get an impression that these sort of cases might be kidney patients. Those patients are also having pallor, and those patients also have some lemon yellow tinge. That is not icterus. This is not icterus, but some lemon yellow tinge. Because of the pallor, they have that. Okay, so this pallor and the lemon yellow tinge, particularly in case of CKD patients. So just look with only a general survey of the face, you have to understand that. So there are so many things you can diagnose. So suppose according to the diagnosis, I am just coming to the point. So suppose if you have a idea, like suppose your patient, so if your patient is having parotid swelling, so it will go in favor of CLD. Okay, the patient seems to be some sort of disoriented, the patient is some confused, some drowsy. Whenever you see some sort of cases like that, so your patient might be having some encephalopathies. It can be end-stage renal disease, it can be hepatic encephalopathy. So any sort of disorientation, the patient might be having any failure. It can be hepatic, renal failure. So orientation is very important. So if you feel that your patient is having some sort of orientation problem, so it might be some sort of failure. Please all mute your mic when I talk. Okay, so puffiness is also very important. Puffiness is also very important for that is renal cases. It can be nephrotic syndrome, it can be glomerulonephritis, it can be any sort of overload. Sometimes the patient with heart failure patients might be having puffiness, and occasionally the CLD patient might be having puffiness as well, but very rarely. Particularly the puffiness we want to tell about the renal cases. So if your patient is grossly anemic and if your patient is puffy, okay, so it is a renal case, so it will give you a clue. Now jaundice is very important, particularly for 2 or 3 reasons. So number one, it can be a liver case. So liver jaundice is related. In second extent, thalassemia, it is very important, particularly whenever your patient is young. And just looking to the patient, if you find that the jaundice is very obvious, so it can be viral hepatitis, because in young age, very young age, CLD is very rare. There are some rare causes of CLD like Wilson's and some other things, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. So it can happen. But with young age, CLD is very rare. So if you find that your patient is grossly pale, anemic, and your patient is having jaundice, and the patient's age is like 17, 18, and if you find some sort of thalassemic phases, so your diagnosis can be thalassemia or some other hemolytic conditions. So it is also important differential. And in case of jaundice, sometimes ESRD patients, okay, ESRD patient, okay, so they takes repeated hemodialysis, okay, repeated hemodialysis. So with repeated hemodialysis, there might be some sort of, viral infection, hepatitis B, C, or any sort of viral infection. So there might be jaundice as well. So with jaundice, you cannot ignore the renal case as well. So I'm just giving that clue for you, okay. And in case of xanthelasma, what are the significance of xanthelasma in abdominal station? What is the significance of xanthelasma? Can anyone tell?
Primary biliary cirrhosis.
Okay, primary biliary cirrhosis. What else?
Metabolic syndrome.
Metabolic syndrome. What else?
Hypercholesterolemia. Same thing.
Hypercholesterolemia. That is NASH. Okay,
Yeah, NASH.
non-alcoholics, NASH alcoholics. So this xanthelasma is very important, particularly to tell about the etiological diagnosis of your CLD. Suppose you see that your patient is having hepatomegaly, your patient is having anemia. Sorry, your patient is having hepatomegaly and your patient is having ascites. Okay, so with hepatomegaly and ascites, and okay, there might be splenomegaly or there you don't get splenomegaly, but there is ascites. Okay, with CLD, hepatomegaly is not so common. So with CLD, we expect that the liver will be shrinked, okay, cirrhosed. But if you feel that your patient is having, hepatomegaly, so there are some causes of hepatomegaly with ascites, hepatomegaly with CLD, CLD with hepatomegaly. So what are those causes? One of the important cause is primary
NASH.
biliary cirrhosis and
Yeah.
NASH. And those two things comes with hepatomegaly with cirrhosis. Okay, hepatomegaly with I am not taking class for last 1 week. That's why I'm having some word mistakes. So the thing is that with CLD with hepatomegaly, okay, CLD with hepatomegaly, and in that case you will get PBC, you will get metabolic syndrome, NASH with xanthelasma. So this xanthelasma is also very important. You have to notice it. And temporal wasting and whatever you say, it is the, if you have seen like 50 CLD cases, suppose if you are working in a hepatology or liver unit, if you have seen like 50 CLD cases very well, then you will actually know what liver faces is. Okay, so a hepatologist will never miss a CLD only by inspect a face, because there is some muddy complexion, there will be temporal wasting, there will be some masseter wasting. Okay, and the patient might be having mild mild jaundice might be there. Okay, so the patient will be having a hepatic phasis. There is a term called hepatic phasis, and go through the books, and if you have any scope, please see some CLD cases to get that idea that this patient might be having some CLD with this sort of wasting. So this is very important. Rash is very rare in abdominal station, because SLE case or any sort of rash case, rarely they give. Okay, but inspect very carefully that any malar rash or not, because sometimes SLE young female lady might be having some hepatosplenomegaly with rashes, with some inflammations in the joints. So rarely, very rarely rash might be there. But thalassemic phases is very important. We have many histories, particularly what happens whenever we get hepatosplenomegaly in pieces. We try to keep the CLD at the top diagnosis, or like whenever you get hepatosplenomegaly. Okay, so it is our tendency that I have the hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, so okay, it can be CLD with ascites or without ascites. So what happens? Most of the time you are right, but if the patient age is less than 30, like it is 25 or even less than 20, so in that case, if you found that your patient is having hepatosplenomegaly, observe the patient very carefully for the thalassemic phases. If the patient is having pallor, and some mild jaundice might be there or not, So in that case, it is a case of hemoglobinopathy, particularly the thalassemia, if you are giving the exam in the Indian subcontinent. There are so many cases of thalassemia, like in Kolkata, Delhi, okay, and there is cases in Kochi as well. So these things is mistakenly described as CLD. So many candidates did that. Okay, so be very careful for that diagnosis. So this is very important. All right, telangiectasia is a very rare diagnosis. Pigmentation is important because particularly, you know, the hemochromatosis, like in Chennai there is a case of hemochromatosis, and sometimes with thalassemia patient there might be secondary hemochromatosis, so pigmentation might be there. Adrenal insufficiency is not a PACES case for the abdomen station, so you don't need to be worried about that. But particularly I am concerned about the CLD secondary to hemochromatosis, and even in hemochromatosis there will be hepatomegaly. All right, so it can happen, particularly in South Indian context, like in in Chennai, Kochi. So you might get a case like that. Tattoo mark, it can be a clue to the, it can be a clue to the any sort of CLD. So any sort of liver case. So these things are important. So these are the, whenever you inspect the face, you will just have a total look on that. Just as a gross survey, you are doing this thing for first 30 seconds, not more than that. Just try to have a gross, you will examine the face closely when you go for systematic examination. You can be very close, but whenever you enter the room inspecting the face, just look that this patient is very pale or not. Is there any parotid swelling apparent or not? Is this face is a cicatric face? Is this face is liver faces? Is the patient face is puffy? So is there any gross apparent rash? So just with a 10-second survey, just try to pick some clues. So whatever you do in the PACES exam, you should have a aim. Without aimless examination of the patient is fruitless. There must be, there you have to have a aim, that whenever you are just looking at the patient, okay, you have to have a gross idea on what it can be like. Just when I was just walking through the road today, I just have a what happened, a patient was I should say a man was sitting just beside the road, and whenever I looked at his face today, actually it was today evening, I felt that this patient might be having some, the face was totally like acromegalic, totally acromegalic. His eyebrows was, some supraorbital ridges was prominent, okay, and the facial features was quite different. And can anyone tell then where after looking at his face, where I looked? Can anyone tell that where I looked after just looking at his face?
Hand and
Ex-
foot.
Exactly, Dr. Kirti. I just after looking at his face, I watched his hand, and surprisingly, I felt that I just noticed at his hand, and I think that his thumb and other fingers was very large, and it was very it is very prominent from outside that his particularly thumb was visible. His thumb was visible, and his thumb was like double of myself, like almost double. So this patient might be having undetected acromegaly because this patient was in the footpath. All right, he was just sitting in beside the road, and I was just walking. So this is the thing, you have to have a aim that okay, with this faces I have the confusion of acromegaly. Then if you look at the hand and face, then you are a PACES candidate. Okay, so you have to bring that inside within you. This is the thing. So whenever you are examining your patient, you are doing the general survey, whatever step you do in your examination, there should be some aim. Aimless examination most of the candidates do when they are at their preliminary stage. If you are in your preliminary stage, you will do examination to show your examiner that I am examining the patient. This is MBBS level of examination. Candidate and a MBBS student. A MBBS student will examine the patient to show his examiner that I am examining the patient, whatever the finding is. and you are examining the patient, you have a aim that I want to diagnose this thing. I want to look this very carefully. So your examination sequence will come inherently. It will come as your second habit, like what you do regularly. So if you focus on your examination sequence, you are not a PCS candidate because you are not at that level. Your sequence will be, it should come so fast, so promptly, like you eat your rice, you take your shower. You don't miss any sequence in eating your food. You don't miss any sequence while you take your shower. Okay, you don't. So these things comes involuntarily. So a PCS candidate's examination sequence and his mode of examination, it will come so fast, so inherently, that it is so normal. But what is, while you examine, your focus will not towards your examiner. Your focus will be towards diagnosis the case, and with the aim that I want to diagnose anemia, whether there is anemia or there is no anemia, and if there is anemia, what is the significance of this anemia in this particular case. Is it going towards a lymphoproliferative disorder, or it is going towards a thalassemia? So with, while you go sequentially, then you are going like from hands, you are going to the face, you are going to the abdomen proper, you are going to the leg edema. Whenever you are examining your whole body, you have to calculate and examine, calculate and examine, calculate and examine. In that case, you will get the diagnosis. If you just examine because you, it is your instruction to examine the patient without any sort of combinations, permutations, and correlations of the sign, you are actually a what should I say, a sheep without a rudder. A sheep without a rudder. A what should I say, you don't have any direction of your examination, then you will definitely fail. That's why you need to know that what I am doing, why I am doing, what I am seeing, why I am seeing. And if I find one sign, then which sign is more important and which should be there. So this correlation is very important for all the cases of station 1 and 3. So sequential, directed examination, focused examination, and definitely there should be some clues and you have to correlate. This is very important. Okay, so these are the general survey of the face. Okay. So what other gross thing you might get from the general survey? Like whenever you enter the room after reading the instruction, face will be definitely visible. The patient's face will never be covered. Okay, never be covered. Okay, and if you see that your patient's legs are open, not covered, just visual impression about the edema. Okay, can anyone tell about the significance of edema in a case of uh, abdomen station in faces? What is the significance of edema?
Like it will shows like renal failure.
Renal failure. So it can be a renal case, like particularly
Yeah.
any glomerulonephritis or any nephrotic syndrome or any conditions
Or
that has led to
or
the renal,
ascites precox in the liver conditions.
any liver conditions, like
Mm.
particularly any CLD. Okay, any
Yeah.
CLD, it can present with edema. What are
Mm.
the other significance of edema?
Hypoalbuminic conditions
There is liver,
in
there is liver.
yeah.
Okay, malabsorption, you are trying to say, okay, malabsorption I can take, but rare cases diagnosis, malabsorption. Okay, so what else? It can be a case of chronic congestive cardiac failure, right? The
Yes.
patient might be having tender hepatomegaly, patient might be having ascites, and you also get that the patient has got edema. Okay, edema,
Anemia.
anemia. The patient will be having anemia, tender hepatomegaly, ascites, shortness of breath, raised JBP with edema. So in patients, even the congestive cardiac failure will be your second diagnosis. Don't tell the CCF as the first diagnosis because it is abdominal station. Okay, so whenever your differential is congestive cardiac failure, you should tell CLD first. Okay, because in CLD everything will be there, right? There will be hepatomegaly, there can be ascites, the patient might be having some anemia as well, the patient might be having edema as well, right? Dr. Kirti, am I wrong or right?
Yes, sir.
So in abdominal station, as CLD is the commonest diagnosis, so I suggest that even if you feel that the congestive cardiac failure is your top diagnosis, but I will tell that if you are not 100% sure that it is congestive cardiac failure, if you are Dr. Kirti, look, if you are 100% sure that your case is congestive cardiac failure, then I don't have any problem. But even if you have any confusion of 20 to 30% that it cannot be a case of congestive cardiac failure, in that case tell congestive CLD as the topmost diagnosis, because everything is there, isn't it? And you are giving the abdominal station, not the cardiology. So
Yes.
in that case, you should tell about the CLD first, then you tell about the congestive cardiac failure, because hepatomegaly, ascites, anemia, edema, everything can be explained with the CLD. Okay. Now, if you feel that your patient has grossly raised JBP, and also if you want, if you take permission from your examiner that you want to check the bilateral basal crepitations, okay, you want to check the relevance, and you feel that the patient has got bilateral basal crepitations, and the patient is already in the propped up position having the oxygen cylinders, okay, gallop rhythm, some other signs, central cyanosis. So if you feel that your patient is having that the definitely the congestive cardiac failure should be in the propped up position, they will never keep that patient in the lying position, isn't it, Dr. Kirti? A congestive cardiac failure patient, so
Yes,
he
sir,
should be
you
in
are
the propped
right.
up position, he should be in the propped up position in the examination bed, he should not be in the lying posture, definitely. And with lying posture, he should, with a patient of ascites, with a patient of edema, he should have some sort of shortness of breath, so that patient will be in the sitting posture, okay, and there will be some shortness of breath while you examine that patient. So congestive cardiac failure patient is very rare in abdominal station, so don't put it at first diagnosis until you are 100% sure. If you are 100% sure, do whatever you want, don't blame me. I am giving you the tips and tricks, so you cannot blame me that doctor you told to not to tell about the CCF at the first, but it was the CCF. I am not taking that liability, but I am telling you the tips and tricks. That is the logical thing, because if you comment on this congestive cardiac failure in the abdominal station at your first diagnosis, so in that case mostly you might be wrong, okay, so be very careful to comment it on the topmost. But with edema, it should be also your prediction, okay, it should be also your prediction. And these are the positive diagnosis to edema. But when you get edema, there is some other vital clues you are also getting. What are those? Mostly it is not a myeloproliferative disorder, okay, no, it is not a myeloproliferative, because we don't expect CML myelofibrosis with edema. So one vital differential is going. Hopefully it is not a case of thalassemia or any hemoglobinopathies or hemolytic anemias, okay, so hopefully it is not a blood case, okay. No. So what other things are no? So in adult polycystic kidney disease, renal transplant, okay, this patient might have edema. So it can be if the patient have overload, but if those patient doesn't have any overload, so there might not be any edema. So edema gives you some vital differential and also denies some vital differential. That's why these things are very important, okay. So this is the thing about the edema. So you can just with general survey, face is very important, and your legs are very important. You can just watch it within it needs only 5 seconds. So with 5 seconds you also have very good idea that what it can be. Already you have a very good idea with the face inspection and edema inspection, so you already have a good idea that it can go in that way. So this is very important. All right, so this is the leg. And with hand examination, I don't want to just have a gross look on the hand. I am not telling you about examining the hands and feet. It is only the gross survey, and you will take for gross survey, you will take about 30 seconds only, okay, like just inspect the face, then just what should I say, expose the patient properly. What is the proper exposure? Proper exposure is the, can anyone tell that what is the proper exposure in Pace's case? Can anyone tell me what is the proper exposure? Like for general
Here,
survey, you
here for the dignity of the patient, we will keep from like nipple to the just above the thigh, like anterior like spine. That we can
Very
see.
good, very good. That is if this is the body, okay, and
Yeah.
this is the, and so this is nipple line. So just this way to this way, okay. Never
Mm.
expose the genitalia. All right, this is
Yeah.
the thing. And below, this is the leg. So you can just leave the cover until mid shin, to check for the edema, okay. And when you go for the general survey, go to the bed end. Go to the foot end, okay, foot end of the patient, like here you are standing, and check for the face here, and also the hands here and the legs here. So with face already you have that clue. With leg inspection you already know that the patient has got, you know, edema. And with the tummy inspection you actually get the idea of a ascites or ADPKD. The patient might be having, you know, gross swelling, or you might get a very important clue of scar or any bandage mark, okay. So these are the general survey when you expose the patient. One is the facial expression, facial inspection. The second is the tummy inspection. It can be gross distension due to ascites, ADPKD. There might be scars of inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease, any past surgery, or there can be some fluid tap mark due to the, you know, some ascites previously, so the tap mark might be there. And also you inspect that way the hands, okay. For hands, what are the things are important in hands, just for general survey, what might be there?
Yeah, leukonychia, koilonychia.
You have to examine closely. I am just telling him about the gross thing, because so the what is the most,
Atrophy, thinner immense, like
no, this is
atrophy of
not
the
important,
muscles.
because the muscle atrophy is not will not give you vital clue. The
Dupuytren
vital clue
contracture.
yes, Dupuytren contracture is one differential that, but I am telling you about the general survey that you can look from distance.
Fistula.
Yes, that fistula. That the fistula is the only thing whenever you will inspect the patient, even from distance. If you feel that the patient has got some engorged veins and some puncture mark in the forearm, so this case is probably a renal case, okay. So particularly from distance you will not actually see the Dupuytren's contracture. I told you about the general inspection from this side, and here from here the hands are not,
we can see.
yeah, yes, Pamari erythema you can see, fistula you can see, but the anemia, jaundice, Dupuytren's contracture, these things you have to examine the hands, then it will be apparent, but not from distance. So from here, when you are at the foot end of the patient, you, what things will be very apparent? One is the face, one is the tummy proper, one is the legs, and the in the hands, particularly the fistula and the Pamari erythema. So with this inspection you already have a gross idea that in which way your case is going. So mostly it will follow three domains. It can be a liver case, it can be a kidney case, it can be a blood case, okay. So with this gross inspection within only 30 seconds, so whoever have scope to examine the patient at hospital, just follow my instruction. With 30 seconds, try to survey these things and try to reach to a possible differential only with this 30 seconds general survey. That will be very much helpful for you. All right, so are you getting me? All right, so Dr. Bias, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you get me what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay, so anyone having any questions until this? You can ask. Dr. Arif, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Today I'm having some connection problem. I missed some of the parts.
Okay.
But
Okay. All right.
right.
All right.
So what about the upper chest?
Upper chest, I'm coming, because upper chest you cannot actually yes, with a very important thing. Upper chest, if you have just inspect it, if there is gross gynecomastia, okay, that is actually Dr. Zaman, thanks for remembering me. Sometimes the gynecomastia will be very much apparent. apparent. Okay, so gynecomastia will be very much apparent. Spider nevi will not be there, will not be very much visible, but the gynecomastia will be very apparent. So you can actually just while you expose the upper chest, it can be very much eminent and it will go towards the CLD. So this is very important. So any
Yeah,
other
secondary
things?
hair also.
Yes, secondary hair, exactly. The secondary hair distributions and the gynecomastia. Thank you, Dr. Kirti and Dr. Zaman. I want interactive sessions because I am a man, so I can forget many things. Please remind so that everyone. So have I missed anything with the general survey? Please, anyone can add anything. Anything else? Anyone with only gross general survey of 30 seconds? Have I missed anything? Anyone can
No,
add
sir.
on?
No, sir.
Anyone can add?
Dr. Shadley, like
Yes.
what kind of gown they usually wear? Like the arm is exposed.
It differs. It differs from center to center. It differs from center to center. You never know. Okay, so sometimes it can be short. It can be long. So differs. You know.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if I missed anything, please add me later. Okay, add it. All right. So.
And doctor, is there somebody here to help us? Like here,
yes, in most of the center there is some helper there, particularly some nurse mostly.
Okay.
So there is some helper most of the time there. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I am coming to the examination of in sequential way. Okay. So this is your patient. Okay, so now what is the normal examination sequence of the patient? Okay, normal examination sequence in most of the time in PACES, particularly for the beginners, those who are already polished candidate, they know the sequence actually, but from our MBBS level, okay, those who are starting PACES very fastly. So I am really sorry again because we cannot show you clinical cases right now, but already our team is going to Dhaka hospitals. Okay, I have set a team to assess the hospital conditions in Dhaka, and it is a very good news for our Dhaka candidates. So we are surveying particularly the national institutes. My team is already there, and they are surveying that whether it is possible to resume the clinical classes. Probably, is it there? If there is academic cases, particularly, and if it is, if we think that it will be fruitful for you, then we might resume it from December or January. But if we feel that the risk benefit ratio, we have to calculate the risk benefit ratio. So if you find that the beneficiaries will be more, so we will go. But if you think that your risk is even more, then we will not go. Okay. So it will depend on the risk benefit ratio. Our team is already surveying that issue, and I have already asked some doctors who are working there. So they will actually see the cases and whether academic cases are being admitted or not. If the academic cases are there, and if we take the full protection, because the national institutes are not the COVID hospitals, particularly the NINS, NICBD, we cannot show you the chest cases in NIDCH, no way, because most of the cases are COVID there, no doubt about that. And the Sheikh Russell Gastro Liver. So we are assessing that very closely, and I give you the assurance that if any course in Bangladesh goes to hospital, PACES work will be the first one. All right, PACES work will be the first one. No course will go even before us. So so stick to us right now. Focus on the station 245. You don't need to think about that thing. We have that in our mind. And if we fail to arrange the clinical course, then we will go for the intensive at least at the February, and that will be both in the online, both offline as well. Okay, so it is our commitment. Hopefully we'll do that. Okay, let's come to the point. So that I was telling for the examination sequence for the beginners. So in PACES, what we do, we start with the hands. Then we go upwards this way, then we go to the face. Okay, then we come to the neck area. Okay, then we examine the chest area, then we go to the abdomen proper, then we go to the legs. Okay, this is the sequence I follow. So you will go hand, then head neck area, then you will go examine the chest area, then you go for the abdomen, and then you go for the legs. This is the sequence. But in case of Bangladesh, or particularly the Indian subcontinent, we are given instruction only to examine the liver, only to examine the abdomen proper. But in case of MRCP, you have freedom to examine the full body, so you are allowed to do. 6 minutes time is yours, so you can examine everything. All right, so you start with the hands. Okay, you start with the hand. Please go through the YouTube videos, there are good videos, and start through it like this. NHS Trust videos for GIT, or station 1 faces abdomen. Okay, you will get some dummy video of some NHS hospitals. They actually conduct the PCS exam, so there are some good videos like this, so you can check. Okay, for already. So in anemia, in hand, what are the vital things you have to check for? All right, okay, so in hand, anyone please help me that what are the vital things you have to check in the hand, and what will be the clues related to that? Okay, so please, anyone please help me regarding this.
First is the pallor, nail. I will see first nail.
Nail. What you expect in the nail, and what is the clue will be there? Why?
Yeah,
you will...
leukonychia is the hypoalbuminemia, then koilonychia for the iron deficiency. And if there is any pitting, like hemorrhages are there, any bleeding.
Okay. Okay, very rarely. Actually, in pieces, what are the most vital things? Okay, so there are so many things.
Contractures.
Yes,
So
definitely
Palmar
important.
erythema.
Palmar erythema, all right.
Then
Palmar
flaps, hepatic flaps.
Hepatic flaps. Anyone else? Anyone? Anything? Want to add anything in hands?
Okay. Clubbing can be.
Very good. All right. So if I calibrate 4 or 5 very vital things that will give us very vital clues from my experience. Palmar erythema. Okay, Palmar erythema is very important because this sign is very specific for CLD. Okay, and Palmar erythema, we frequently find that. Okay, we frequently get this sign. So be very particular about Palmar erythema because it is very common sign. So that's why I am focusing on that. Number 1 is Palmar erythema. Be very careful about that because it is a very easy to get sign and very specific for CLD. Number 1. Number 2 sign is that, from my context, I want to say that what is the most common other things we get, like Dr. Kirti said, there is leukonychia. Okay, leukonychia is also very important because in CLD case, sometimes actually the fingernail beds are very white, and leukonychia is pretty common sign. Okay, pretty common sign. And sometimes with hand examination, particularly in viral hepatitis cases, and rarely the CLD cases, jaundice is also very apparent, particularly if you examine the palm of the hands. Okay, palm of the hands, you will see that the hand is yellowish. Okay, so already sometimes I have my case actually had some yellow tinge on the palmar aspect of the hands, and sometimes in the nail bed as well. So jaundice is easily gettable as well. Okay, so you actually, theoretical things are not so important. What we actually get, what things are easily gettable, so you have to focus on that. So jaundice has its significance, Palmar erythema, leukonychia. Another very vital thing we commonly forget, that is flap. Flap is very important, particularly it signifies any sort of failure. Okay, so flap, it is very important. Jaundice, leukonychia, Palmar erythema. Okay, and in CLD we also get clubbing, but very rarely. But any clubbing should not be missed, and it should be very much important that you get this clubbing. So these are the very important things we get in case of hand examination, along with the anemia as well. You will sometimes the hands will be very pale. So anemia, you might get some clue from that. So with this hand examination, you will get to know that. And also, though it is not so relevant, check the pulse. Check the pulse while you will hold the patient right arm with your right hand, okay, and palpate the pulse with your left hand, okay, left hand. The videos are there, just go for that. So I will also give some links of the videos to the group today. Just remind me, so I will give the link as well. So these are the vital things in the hand examinations, okay. Sometimes there will be some wasting. There will be some wasting in the hands that will actually denote the any liver disease. The liver disease patients are generally cachectic, and some malabsorption patients, particularly celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease. So with hand examination, there might be some dorsal gutterings and some gross wasting in the forearms and arms as well. So wasting might be there. It is also a good finding. So you can just rely on that. This is the vital thing. Then come to here. This is the forearm. This is the forearm. The most vital thing I am concerned about, very carefully, another thing, another vital actually thing I missed in the hand, that is any joint swelling, or any arthritis, okay, any deformity. Sometimes rarely they might give you Felty syndrome, splenomegaly with rheumatoid arthritis, so there might be deformity. So they might give you some they might give you SLE, okay. So there might be some joint pain, and the instruction might be given that the patient has got joint pain and some tummy distension. So the patient have actually the ascites patient, a young lady with ascites. Your prompt is that the patient has got joint pain and tummy swelling. Suppose you are given a patient like 23 years old lady or 30 years lady, and when you entered the room, your prompt is that the patient is having joint pain and tummy discomfort. Please examine the patient. So you get that your patient has got some pain in the hand. When you ask that I'm going to examine your hand, may I know, is there any pain anywhere in your body? Or you can say that I'm going to examine your examine you. So may I know that is there any pain anywhere in your body? So they will tell that I have pain in the hands. So already it is a clue that the patient has got some joint pain. So you can ask for, can you please show me where is your hand? I will be more careful while I examine your hands. That means she is giving you the clue of joint pain. Second clue is that the patient already telling about the tummy discomfort. So why this patient will have tummy discomfort? That means serositis. That means the patient has got edema. The patient has got the ascites. So with this combination, SLE should come very early, as the patient having joint pain, anemia, patient has got ascites and the edema. The patient doesn't have any organomegaly, and the patient is young female. So you can put the connective tissue disorder, particularly SLE, on top with this combination, okay. So there is no problems with that. So the joint condition, joint swelling and joint pain, this is important. Okay, now I am coming to the point of hand. Here is the vital thing, is that fistula. This is very important. And in fistula, you have to check for whether there is any puncture mark or not. Can anyone tell that? Please, anyone tell me how to examine a fistula? Dr. Ronnie, please, can you please tell me that what are the vital things we assess in a fistula? Please enlighten us on the some brief about the fistula examination, Dr. Ronnie.
At first, we see if there is any if the fistula is active or not.
Okay, so how we see that? How we see that the fistula is active or not?
At first, we palpate.
Okay.
Then we see if there is any bruit there.
Okay.
And we see if there is any recent mark of use.
Okay.
Fistula.
All right. That means puncture mark. Some puncture mark.
Puncture mark. Yeah.
Okay, puncture mark. So if there is puncture mark, recent puncture mark, some wounds there, that means the patient is taking dialysis in the fistula. This is one sign. Okay, and so one thing is the activity, and whether the fistula is functioning or not? How will you assess that? With the bruit.
Bruit. Okay.
Okay, so number one, that whether the patient this fistula is active or not. So we will see the puncture mark. If it is puncture mark is there, that means it is active. The patient is taking dialysis in the fistula. Number one, your fistula is, the whether your fistula is that is functioning. If the suppose the patient is not taking the dialysis through that fistula, okay, might not be, she is not taking it, but whether the fistula here is functioning or not. So it is the bruit, right? You have to palpate over the fistula, and also you have to put your stethoscope on that to check for any bruit is there or not. So if there is any bruit present, that is pretty sure. So in that case, you can say that it is functioning. All right. And what else you need to check? Can anyone tell?
Is it cord-like feelings or not?
So with cord-like feelings, what it denotes?
Mature or immature?
Exactly. So if there is any, if you feel that it is cord-like, okay, cord-like, that means after fistula, you know that after just doing the fistula, you cannot go for dialysis, okay, because it takes some time to be matured, because there is some issues of recanalization and epithelializations, and for that reason we start dialysis like 6 months after doing it, okay. So it takes some time to get matured. So if it is cord-like structure, that then we can see that, okay, it is matured. So these are the parts of fistula examination that you have to see for the puncture mark, you have to check for the bruit, okay, you have to check for, what should I say, that is the maturity by seeing the cord-like structure. So this fistula is very important, and sometimes there are multiple puncture mark, okay, 2 or 3 puncture mark. So this is very important. And sometimes there is some aneurysms as well. If you see that any aneurysm is there, okay, some vascular aneurysms might form, some dilatations are there, so you can also comment on that, okay. And sometimes some, there might be some reddening, some wounds there. So sometimes thrombophlebitis and cellulitis also differential. In station 5 in Delhi, they put a case of thrombophlebitis in the fistula, okay. So it might be there. So this fistula examination is very important, okay. So once you get the fistula, it is very important that why there is the fistula, okay. So it can be a case of end-stage renal disease. The patient is taking renal replacement therapy in the form of dialysis. So this can be the issue. Number one. Number two, if you find that the patient has got a renal transplant, the patient has got a scar in the iliac fossa, and the patient has the renal transplant, but even the patient has a active fistula with puncture mark, then you can tell that the patient might be having failed transplant. That's why he is taking the dialysis in the fistula. So there is also a possibility that it signifies that the transplant is actually not working, okay. So this is important. And occasionally, very rarely, there is some experience from Chennai I want to share, that there are so many renal cases. In in Chennai, okay. So actually what happened, many cases in Chennai and South India, they have the renal cases. So many patients will have fistulas, but that doesn't mean that this case is the renal case. Sometimes what happens, because of long standing dialysis process, the patients actually develop CLD, because they might got hepatitis B or C sometime during the dialysis, and later on the patients actually develop CLD or viral hepatitis. So don't be so much biased that whenever you get a case of fistula, that this case must be renal case. Sometimes, rarely, might be that it cannot be renal case. Sometimes there might be hepatomegaly, there might be ascites, there might be jaundice, stigmatas of the CLD. So it can be CLD as well, but very rarely. particularly be particular in Chennai center, Kochi center. Rarely it can happen that whether even the patient has the fistula, it is not a renal case. Okay, so it can happen. Okay, there are cases in Chennai and Kochi. So fistula doesn't mean 100% that it is renal case. Rarely it can be liver case as well, and the explanation is the viral hepatitis or virally mediated CLD. So it can happen. Okay, all right. So I think that those who have previously given exam in Chennai, they know this. Okay, so these are the actually hidden tips I am giving to you. These are the experience from the candidates. Not all the courses will teach you these things. This is very important. All right. Okay, so this is the fistula. You have to check for that. And already in the face examination, face examination, I have told everything that which things you need to focus. Okay, with things you need to focus. So already the most vital thing. So can anyone please help me that what are the most vital things? If I tell the most vital thing is here is jaundice, right? Most vital thing is jaundice. Number 2 is anemia. Anemia, head neck region. Number 3, can anyone tell which one is the more in head neck region? If I tell 3 vital examination, what are those? Can anyone tell? I have told you 2. What else? Now, what is the number 3? What? Head neck region.
Lymphadenopathy.
Exactly, lymphadenopathy. Okay, so if I mention about the 3 things in the head neck region, number 1 is jaundice, number 2 is anemia, number 3 is lymph node. Can anyone tell why I told about these 3 things, not other things, xanthelasma, not parotid swelling, not angular stomatitis, no, some other things? Why I told?
Lymphoproliferative, like
Not only the lymphoproliferative, actually these 3 things will actually change your diagnosis. Okay, these 3 things will change your diagnosis. That's the most vital thing. If your patient is having lymphadenopathy, like if your patient is lymphadenopathy, this case should not be a hemolytic anemia. This case should not be a thalassemia. Okay, so if your patient is having lymphadenopathy, this case should not be a clean-cut CLD. So this lymphadenopathy has a great significance. All right, great significance. Okay, if your patient is having gross anemia, paper white anemia, this has also a very great significance. What are those great significance? Can anyone tell me? Suppose in PACES center, you are seeing that your patient is grossly pale. What are the thinking should strike in your mind? Please, can anyone help me? Please help me.
End-stage renal disease.
Number 1. Number 2. Lymphoma, leukemia, any underlying malignancy like hepatocellular, any sort of malignancies. Okay, so if the patient is having striking anemia, now one thing can be end-stage renal disease, CKD. It's a very good diagnosis. The second thing is that lymphoproliferative disorder, myeloproliferative disorder. Okay, lymphoproliferative disorder, myeloproliferative disorder, those patients will be anemic. Okay, anemic. So with paper white anemias, so these are very, very important differential. In case of ADPKD, I don't expect anemia, right? In case of ADPKD, if it turns to CKD, then it can. But in case of ADPKD, there is excessive secretion of the erythropoietin. So in that case, the anemia is very rare. In a clean-cut case of CLD without hepatocellular carcinoma, anemia is rare. Okay, anemia is rare. So if it is very young age patient with thalassemic phases, okay, anything like that, so anemia is the sign of hematologic conditions. And even in the old age patient, lymphoproliferative lymphoma, leukemia, myeloproliferative CML, myelofibrosis, so these things should come in your mind. So why I am telling you, it will actually change your diagnosis. That's why these 3 things are, other things are important, cyanosis, angular cheilitis, stomatitis, raw beef tongue, xanthelasma, parotid swellings, everything is important, rash. but those things will actually unify towards the diagnosis. But these three things, if present, not present, there is significant change in the differentials. That's why just don't examine it casually. Write it down in your notebook. Don't examine anemia, jaundice, and lymph node casually, because this will change your diagnosis. This will change your diagnosis 100%. So these three things are very important. One thing I want to mention, please write it down in your notebook. In abdominal stations, peripheral signs are equally important to your abdomen proper. Write it down. In abdominal station, peripheral signs are equal to your abdominal finding. Can anyone signify it? Because just go for the differential diagnosis of the hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, hepatosplenomegaly. Whenever you will go to the differential of hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, and hepatosplenomegaly, you will be almost, what should I say, astonished. You will be amazed to see that most of the differential diagnoses are same. Because the hepatomegaly and hepatosplenomegaly, you can see that 80% diagnoses are same. With splenomegaly and hepatosplenomegaly, you will see the similar conditions. There will be hepatomegaly, there will be lymphoproliferative, there will be myeloproliferative, there will be tuberculosis, there will be some malignancy with metastasis. So the differential will be same. It will actually not give you the ultimate diagnosis. Okay, so to reach to the ultimate diagnosis, you need something else. You need some ascites, you need some edema, you need some jaundice, you need some lymphadenopathy. Then you will tell that this is going this way. But this is not true in case of cardiology. In case of cardiology, murmur is the 90%. In case of cardiology, murmur is the 80 or 90%. But abdomen, it is not like that. Okay, so in abdomen with organomegaly, you need something else. You need something else to reach to a unifying diagnosis. That's why your peripheral signs are equally important. In respiratory system, your chest examination is 70% and 30% is your peripheral sign. But in abdomen, it is 50-50. In abdomen, it is 50-50. And in neurology, it is 50-50. That means in neurology, with only your task, you cannot tell the total diagnosis. Because with the hand examination, there might be some signs, but you cannot tell, I am 100% sure this is the diagnosis. Because without total neurological examination, diagnosis will be incomplete. Same thing is actually right in case of abdominal examination, because with some other peripheral signs, your diagnosis will change. So be careful. These things, these are the actually, what should I say? These things I am telling, no books will tell you this thing. No books of paces, no one will tell you that actually. But just try to realize that actually, do you want to challenge me or do you actually agree with me? If you want to challenge me, you can challenge me, because I will take it as a challenge. But I want to mention, so my teaching is that in abdomen, you can go to the abdomen examination bit later, because it takes not too much time to examine liver, spleen, ascites, and kidney. But in case of cardiology, you have to go to the precordium auscultation as early as possible, because you have to detect the murmur. That's why you don't have any time to, you cannot lose any time to go to the precordium. In chest examination, you cannot waste your time in the periphery. Rather than you have to focus on the chest, whether there is any crepitation, any bronchial breathing, any pleural effusion. So you have to go to the chest as early as possible. But in abdomen, the things are not like that. So these things are very important. Okay. So I hope you understand. All right. So where I was, so the jaundice, anemia, lymphadenopathy, these things are very important, and other signs I already told earlier. Okay. And particularly in this area, the spider neva is very important in the upper chest and upper back. Okay, upper back. So you have to check for the spider nevi very carefully. if possible with a torchlight. Okay, if you suspect already that the patient is having some mild jaundice, patient is icteric, patient has Dupuytren's contracture and Pamari erythema, already you have an idea that the patient might be CLD case. So if it is a CLD case, be very careful that it can be, there might be some spider nevi that you are missing, and always keep it in your mind that the spider nevi is very common in case of CLD. This is very important. And also you might get gynecomastia as well. Okay, gynecomastia is a very common sign, and rarely you will see that there is the less hair distribution in the chest, and also in the axillary region. It is also sign of CLD. The patient doesn't have any the hair distribution in the chest and axillary region. This is very important. Okay, all right. So now coming to the abdomen proper. Abdomen proper. Can anyone tell that in abdomen proper, which
Dr.
sign?
Shadri,
Yes, yes.
what about the central lines, Hickman lines, and scar marks?
Scar marks. Okay, central line, Hickman line. Okay. So actually, this thing, yes, I actually I want to say the central lines and Hickman lines. Okay, but you can get that. And also in the neck examination, I already wanted to say, I forgot actually. In the neck, you can get the some central lines, particularly some scars of central line. Okay, you will not mostly you will not get what should I say, the central line inserted in a pieces case, very rarely. Okay, sometimes there might be some some porta cath. Okay, sometimes in UK centers you might get some with some active central lines. It is very rare. So you might get some scar marks in the neck region, particularly in the jugular venous line and subclavian lines. So you can get some mark there that will actually signify the past mode of renal replacement therapy. So if you get that there is fistula and the patient has got some scar mark in the neck region, so it can be that previously the patient took hemodialysis in the form of central lines. So it is an important finding. Okay, so but it rare in these centers. And sometimes in UK centers you will get some sort of devices. Particularly you might get some Hickman line, you might get some porta cath. So they very rarely. So it is not so much common. Okay, that is the thing. Okay, so now I'm coming to the point of tummy proper. Okay, so in tummy proper, can anyone tell me that which sign is very important to reach the diagnosis, and which will actually change your diagnosis? Because I already told that hepatosplenomegaly, only hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, this diagnosis actually the differentials related to hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, and hepatosplenomegaly are actually almost similar, almost very close. Okay, so I will come to that combination later on, but the ascites is very important. Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Kirti. Ascites is very important. Okay, so ascites is very important because the ascites will change your diagnosis. Okay, ascites will change your diagnosis. Like suppose the patient of ascites in case of PACES examination, until otherwise proved, you can write it down in your notebook. A case of ascites until otherwise proved in PACES examination is a CLD case. So I will recommend that whenever you get ascites, vigorously look for any stigmata of CLD. It can be splenomegaly, it can be spider nevi, it can be Pamari erythema, loss of hair distribution, parotid swelling, mild jaundice, what it can be. So whenever you get some ascites, so your task will be to see that whether you can establish the case as CLD or not. Is it possible or not? Okay, so if it is possible somehow, then the CLD is the topmost diagnosis. Okay, so what else other can present with ascites? Okay, what other differentials, what are the other common thinking? Okay, so another common thinking that if it is a it is a renal case, so if there is any fluid overload, any fluid overload, so there might be ascites. There might be ascites. So these two are the prime diagnosis, because this is the common scenario of PACEs. Okay, so if you somehow fit ascites with these two sort of case, this is okay. But if you cannot do that, then you have to end up with the differential of the ascites. Differential of the ascites, like it can be, intra-abdominal tuberculosis. It can be, any intra-abdominal malignancy. Intra-abdominal malignancy. It can be, if there is also edema, so it can be a case of nephrotic syndrome. It can be a case of heart failure. Okay, so then you will end up with the differentials. So with this ascites, your diagnosis is changing. And same in case of edema, when you get a patient of ascites, some vital differentials are going from your mind. What are those vital differentials? So it is mostly, it is not a case of lymphoproliferative disorder, though sometimes in lymphoma you will get ascites, but I don't want to take it here. It is not a case of myeloproliferative disorder. It is not a case of Kalajor. Sometimes Kalajor patient have, sorry, I don't want to mention it, because in Kalajor there is hypoalbuminemia, so ascites might be there, but rarely, occasionally there was a possibility that it might not be there. So it is definitely not a case of thalassemia or any blood cases like any other hemoglobinopathies. Okay, so with this sort of ascites, some vital differentials are going. Okay, vital differentials are going. So ascites detection is a what should I say, a vital skill of a PACEs candidate. So when it should be done very properly. So this is the message first I want to give, number one. Okay, then what is the number two in abdomen proper examination? Always keep in your mind one thing, that in abdomen examination, in PACEs, okay, there will be big organomegalies. Okay, there is nothing like just palpable. There is nothing like mild enlargement. No, in PACEs there is nothing like mild enlargement, just palpable. It is not in case of PACEs. In PACEs you will get the organomegalies very big, very big. That means sometimes you will be in a trouble that whether it is liver or kidney, it is spleen or kidney. So you will be having difficulties in identifying that whether it is the hepatomegaly or it is the kidney of adult polycystic kidney disease in the right side. Sometimes you will be in dilemma that whether it is the gross splenomegaly or it is the adult polycystic kidney disease. So this sort of controversies will happen. But I have got just palpable spleen, I have got just palpable liver. It is absurd. It is very rare. And to detect that just palpable liver and spleen, some of the candidate hurts the patient, and for that reason they fail. So always keep it in your mind that the organomegaly should be very easy in PACEs. So you don't need to press too much. You don't need to give what should I say? Press on the tummy so hard to actually make your patient discomfortable. No, the whenever there will be organomegaly, it will be very easily gettable. Very rarely, if the candidate is very poor and never examine the patient well, in that case he or she will miss the hepatomegaly or splenomegaly or something like that. All right, so this is big, you should get it, number one. Number two is that another thing you need to mention, that whenever you are getting some organomegaly, be very particular to see that whenever you are examining the patient, you don't hurt the patient, because if your patient is hurt, then you will definitely fail. So whenever you are going for deep palpation, always look at the face of the patient and ask for permission. Sir, I am examining your tummy. If you feel any sort of pain, please let me know just at that time, so that I will stop there. So please take this permission. So many abdominal case was failed only due to poor instruction to the patient. This is very important. All right. Okay. So with these things, I want to tell that whenever you are examining your patient's abdomen proper, now try to correlate your signs from the peripheral signs that are okay. So I have got that the patient has got jaundice. Okay, so I have got the patient has jaundice. So what is my expectation? So if my patient is having jaundice, I am expecting that the patient might be having only hepatosplenomegaly. Only hepatosplenomegaly. Be very careful about hepatosplenomegaly. It can be hemolytic anemia. Okay, only clean cut hepatosplenomegaly with thalassemia. So the patient is like that. Number one. I have got that the patient has got I have got the patient has got jaundice. Okay, so all right. So whenever I am examining the patient, I have seen that the patient has got hepatomegaly. Okay, hepatomegaly. So whenever I am palpating the tummy, I feel that the patient is getting pain in the liver area. So the patient has got jaundice and tender hepatomegaly. That means when I told previously, you should have a aim. You should have a aim while you are examining the tummy as well. So already you have got the jaundice. Now you are examining the liver. So if it is not in your mind that whether the liver is tender or not, you are missing the viral hepatitis. Okay, so you are missing the viral hepatitis. So you have to check for during the examination of the liver that the patient gets pain or not, and also ask that is there any pain there, so that if it is tender and the patient has got jaundice, so it can be a viral hepatitis case. Painful jaundice with painful hepatomegaly with jaundice, it is not the most likely it is not the thalassemia. So it can be viral hepatitis. It is also a Pace's case. It is also a very common Pace's case.
Can be Budd-Chiari?
Budd-Chiari very rare diagnosis. Budd-Chiari very rare diagnosis, and without ascites, Budd-Chiari rare. Okay, so you should be you can keep at the differential at the bottom of the list, but not at the top. Okay, not at the top. Okay, so this is the thing. So the that means whenever you are seeing the jaundice, it can be hemolytic anemia, it can be viral hepatitis, it can be CLD, it can be CLD with hepatomegaly, it can be hepatocellular carcinoma, it can be hepatocellular carcinoma on the background of CLD with jaundice and hepatomegaly. So there should be something in your mind. Number one. All right. So number two is that then try to see that whether your patient is having only hepatomegaly or splenomegaly. Okay, so if the patient has got hepatomegaly with jaundice, it is a clean cut case of liver case, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. The patient has got jaundice and the liver, it is a hepatology case. Okay, it is a hepatology case until otherwise proved. So it can be CLD, it can be acute viral hepatitis. Okay, it can be Budd-Chiari, whatever it is. It can be hepatocellular carcinoma. So jaundice with liver, it is the liver condition, no doubt about it. Okay, and the patient with jaundice, liver with spleen, the patient with liver with spleen. Okay, so this combination, the differential are huge. Okay, this combination, the differential are huge. Okay, so now I should go for some other writing so that it becomes quite easy for you. So the patient is having hepatosplenomegaly. Okay, so what I told, what are the combinations I can write? Number one combination is, liver plus jaundice. The case is liver case. Okay, And with liver and jaundice, you might additionally get spleen. Okay, you might additionally get spleen. So if you get spleen, so it is most likely a case of CLD. Okay, so liver, jaundice, it is a liver case. With that, if you get lymph node, and if the liver is hard, okay, so it can be a case of hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay, it can be a hepatocellular carcinoma. All right. And with spleen, liver, jaundice, it is a liver case. But if you get spleen air, then you have to keep it in your mind the thalassemia as well. Okay, thalassemia is also a possibility. With liver, jaundice, with spleen, thalassemia is also a possibility. So this is the combination. All right, so now coming to the vital combination, that is the hepatosplenomegaly. Okay, so you have got the hepatosplenomegaly. So what are the combinations? So if your patient is having hepatosplenomegaly with anemia, so you should start with hepatosplenomegaly with anemia. So what is the differential you should consider? So it can be a case of, you know, thalassemia. It can be a case of lymphoproliferative disorder. It can be a case of myeloproliferative disorder. Okay, hepatosplenomegaly with anemia. It can be a case of malaria. It can be a case of Kala-Jar. Okay, or some sort of infection. So if your case is anemia